Hi, this is James Fox, your host. In our last video, we talked about spiritual awakenings, and I often find the terms awakening and enlightenment are used interchangeably, as if they have the same meaning. So in today's video, let's dive into one of the most profound and timeless subjects, enlightenment. Whether we see it as a spiritual awakening, personal growth, or an expansion of consciousness, the idea of enlightenment has intrigued humanity for a millennia. So what is enlightenment? At its core, enlightenment is often described as a state of profound clarity, freedom from suffering, and deep understanding of life's nature. Many spiritual traditions from Buddhism and Hinduism and certain philosophical schools speak of enlightenment as the ultimate goal of human existence. But what does the path of enlightenment look like? Why should we strive for it? And what are the challenges of seeking enlightenment while living in this very human material world? Today we'll explore these questions and more. The first part is really reviewing the stages of enlightenment. Enlightenment is often seen as a journey with different stages marking our progress. Although those stages can vary depending on the tradition, they generally follow a similar pattern. Let's break down some common stages of enlightenment. The first stage is a call to awakening. It really begins with an inner yearning, a call to something greater than ourselves, often triggered by a life event or personal crisis, or simply deep reflection. We start to ask bigger questions. Who am I? What is the purpose of life? It's at this point that we recognize that the way we've been living may not be fulfilling, may not be complete. We begin to seek answers beyond the material world. The second stage is self-examination and ego awareness. Once the call to awakening has been answered, the next stage involves deep self-reflection. We start to examine our thoughts, our beliefs, and the role of the ego. The ego is that part of us that identifies with the self, the I, and it can often trap us in illusions of separation, fear, and desire. This is the stage where people begin to confront their own shadows, realizing how much of their suffering comes from attachment to the self. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and self-inquiry are commonly used at this stage to develop awareness of the ego's influence. As we distance ourselves from our egoic identities, we begin to glimpse something deeper, a more expansive and interconnected consciousness. The third stage is transcendence and letting go. As we move further on the path, we begin to experience transcendence, or a sense of oneness with all things. This is the stage where duality, or the idea that we are separate from the world, begins to dissolve. It can be a liberating experience as we start to let go of attachments, whether they're material possessions or relationships, or even our own self-image. This stage is often accompanied by profound inner peace and detachment from the outcomes of life. The person begins to realize that much of suffering in life is due to resistance and clinging to things that are impermanent, always changing. The fourth stage, final stage, is what we often call full enlightenment, the realization of our true nature. In this state, the individual is fully awakened to the interconnectedness of all things and experiences life without fear, attachment, or suffering. Enlightened beings are described as living in a constant state of presence, love, and wisdom. This ultimate realization brings a sense of unity with the universe. There is no self apart from the whole. It's a state beyond words, often described as ineffable, meaning too great or extreme to be expressed or described in words. Yet it's the peak of human spiritual potential. Part 2, why seek enlightenment? So now that we've looked at the stages, you might be wondering the same question. Why would someone want to seek enlightenment? Let's explore a few of the reasons why. Number 1, freedom from suffering. One of the biggest motivators for seeking enlightenment is the promise of freedom from suffering. In Buddhist teachings, for example, enlightenment is the way to end the cycle of birth and death and rebirth. And all of this cycle from birth to reincarnation is just filled with suffering. In a more practical sense, enlightenment offers a way to live without being caught in the ups and downs of our emotions or the inevitable changes of life. When we stop identifying so closely with our thoughts and desires, we stop suffering over things we can't control. Enlightenment offers a kind of inner liberation, freedom from attachment and fear. Another reason people seek enlightenment is to gain a deeper understanding of reality. Enlightened individuals are said to perceive life as it truly is, beyond illusion. They realize the interconnectedness of things, the impermanence of life. This understanding brings peace, wisdom, and clarity, allowing them to navigate life with grace. The third reason to seek enlightenment is really about living a life of purpose and meaning. It's not just about personal fulfillment, but about serving others, being a source of light, compassion, and love in the world. Enlightened beings often dedicate themselves to helping others awaken, helping others find peace, which gives life a sense of purpose beyond self. Part 3, what are some of the challenges of seeking enlightenment in a human world? So while the path to enlightenment is alluring, it's not without its challenges, especially when we try to pursue it while living in this human, relative, and sometimes cruel world. Number one, there's a clash with material desires. One of the biggest challenges in reconciling the spiritual pursuit of enlightenment with the demands of everyday life. In our world, we're constantly bombarded with material desires and money, possessions, status, pleasure. These things can distract us from the inner work that's required to attain enlightenment. Enlightenment really asks you to let go of all those attachments and all those things. But that's not exactly easy when the world around us encourages us to seek them. In fact, the world around us labels us and identifies the status to us for those things that we possess or don't possess. So finding balance between the material and the spiritual can be one of the most difficult parts of the journey. The word we use for that journey is integration, finding that balance. The next challenge is isolation and misunderstanding. It can sometimes feel isolating as you pursue enlightenment and you're giving up some of these items. Because you embark on this spiritual path, you're probably going to find that others don't understand your quest. Friends, family, and society may not share your values or your interest in inner growth. This can create feelings of isolation or even loneliness, as the spiritual journey often requires you to go within and away from the distractions of society. Sometimes you may even be misunderstood or judged for seeking a life that doesn't conform to conventional norms. These pressures can make it hard to stay committed to the path. The third challenge is the difficulty of letting go. Letting go of the ego and detachments is perhaps the greatest challenge in seeking enlightenment. We are conditioned to identify with our thoughts, our emotions, and our identities. Letting go of these attachments, especially deeply ingrained ones, can feel like a loss of self. It can be frightening, it can be uncomfortable. And the ego will resist this process, making it a constant struggle to release old habits, old mindsets. In the end, the pursuit of enlightenment is a deeply personal journey. It's not an easy path. It requires self-discipline, courage, and a willingness to go beyond what we think we know. But for many, it's a journey worthwhile and a journey worth taking. While there are challenges in reconciling the spiritual and the material world, the rewards, freedom from suffering, deep inner peace, living a life of compassion and purpose, can make it all worthwhile. But remember, enlightenment it's not an end goal to be achieved, but an ongoing process of awakening or even successive awakenings, and the growth that results. It's a journey of becoming more fully human, more connected to the universe. Other perspectives argue that enlightenment is not getting rid of all problems, all pain, all issues, and being happy ever after, or even being rich or successful. Enlightenment is being what is, everything that is, without preferences, discrimination, denial, or rejection. What somebody truly needs is to cope with is not their unfulfilled desire for enlightenment, but their denial of reality, their rejection of who they are and what they are as they are. This denial and rejection can be answered by acceptance, pure surrender and acceptance. This same group would argue that enlightenment is just that. It's just acceptance, and that humans can't achieve enlightenment, but they can achieve aspects of it, and acceptance is one of those. All humans can practice acceptance and surrender to what is, and with practice they can get better at it. I'll tell you what feels right to me is that what we awaken to is always here. It's infinite, eternal, the source of everything we perceive. And if you want to talk about awakenings or enlightenment, I see those as two different points on a scale of a continuum. Clearly, the first awakening, the one I experienced a few years ago, I believe was just the start. And now it appears to be getting deeper and deeper and wider, and things that are meant to come up, things perhaps that are unresolved or in the process of being resolved, are surfacing and being managed. So life clearly does not get to a point quickly where there is, everlasting peace and harmony, but it is night and day better than it was prior to awakening. And the tools that you're equipped with to manage, to observe your behavior, observe your mindset, your thinking, trying to stay as present as possible. I will tell you personally, enlightenment seems like it's light years away. But, everything between awakening and full enlightenment, if that's even possible, is welcomed and is blissful. And I can only hope to be even a small percentage of enlightened, as some of those would argue. So anyways, thank you for being here today. This, again, is the beginning of setting a foundation of some key terms of what I think is important, and then we'll see where this channel heads. I hope these thoughts provide some insight into what enlightenment is, or common thinking about it, why it matters, how it relates or is connected to awakening, and how we might navigate the difficulties in this world with both of those items. So, again, I'm James Fox, your host. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.